Welcome to Hell Plus Sports. I'm Helen Cross, and across the table from me is Christian Gore.
Is that who I am? Okay.
Christian.
You say so. Hello.
Welcome to Hell Plus Sports. Thank you for joining me on this show. I greatly appreciate it.
That's okay. I haven't been following sports as much as I usually do.
Yeah.
You know.
What about hockey?
Well, I haven't been following that. Well, there's been nothing to follow. But finally, the lockout is over. They're going to start playing again. 48 game season, as opposed to the normal 82 games. I'm excited as a Kings fan to see the Kings back on the ice defending their Stanley Cup championship, first ever. It's been a long wait.
How long is this a lockout?
The lockout, okay, the season was supposed to start in October. Mm-hmm. It's starting Friday, the 19th.
The 19th.
Or, no, Saturday the 19th. So it's starting Saturday, January 19th. It was supposed to start in October. So.
Wow.
So it's just been months and months and months of the owners deciding they didn't like the deal, so they wanted to renegotiate, and they locked the players out rather than go ahead with the collective bargaining agreement they had in place. Mm-hmm. So basically, nothing happened. You know, some places you could watch, like minor league hockey, and a lot of the players went overseas to play. So it's going to be a very interesting season. I think some players are going to be in better shape than others. You know, some players who had injuries or surgeries to recover from obviously got more time. So, I mean, there are some positives in some regards. But it's been absolutely...
Just a little too long.
It's been a brutal wait. And for the most part, I think Gary Bettman has become like the most hated man in hockey.
Oh, gosh.
Well, because he wasn't even negotiating at times. It was like, well, we said we want this. The union rejected that deal. They didn't give us a counter proposal, so we're not even going to talk to them. The union would give a counter proposal. They said, well, we don't like that, so we're not going to talk to them. You're not going to get any negotiating done if you don't talk to each other. So finally, they sat down, they came to an agreement. Hockey will finally start.
This was back in December?
Actually, the agreement actually happened a couple weeks ago.
Just a couple weeks ago.
So.
Wow.
So it was a whole lot of just waiting for nothing. And it was all about greed. And that's really all it was.
Yeah.
You know? The sport was actually on an incline. You know, this is the second time that Gary Bettman has been involved in a lockout. The last lockout ended the season without a playoffs.
What?
So I believe there was a start to that season, and they lost the playoffs.
I'm not very much into hockey, and that's not very good because, I mean, you play throughout the entire season and come to the playoffs and... Well,
it was before the playoffs even came around.
Okay.
I don't remember what happened that year because I think I was... I wasn't paying as much attention at that time. I mean, I've always followed hockey. I just hadn't that particular year, and I don't even remember what year it was. There was other stuff going on in my life, but yeah, it wiped out the season. And I think the Kings were doing poorly that year, so I didn't really pay much attention. But the Kings have done poorly many years of my life.
You've always been a hockey fan.
Not always. I grew up in Los Angeles, and I always rooted for the hometown teams. Mm-hmm. It wasn't until Gretzky came to LA that I realized that LA had a hockey team. And actually, by then, I had moved to New York. So it wasn't until I went to Madison Square Garden and watched hockey, actually live, that I came to appreciate the sport. And I watched the Rangers and the Hartford Whalers. And I've always kind of followed those teams. I obviously can't follow the Hartford Whalers anymore because they don't exist. They moved to Carolina, became the Hurricanes. I think that's them. Mm-hmm. They won a Stanley Cup championship as the Hurricanes, if I remember correctly. But no, it's just been really. Like I said, I watched them go to the Stanley Cup Finals and lose to the Montreal Canadiens. Real original name, Montreal. Yeah, I watched them play the Canadiens. They won game 1 and then lost 4 straight. And that was Gretzky was still with the team. That was really his last great playoff run. It was a great season. Kelly Hrudey was he was a mediocre. He was kind of mediocre most of the season, but in the playoffs, he just hit his stride and was great. Yeah.
Well, I'm definitely interested in how this rolls out.
Hopefully, this collective bargaining agreement will last. Hockey will have a chance to heal.
Yeah, because now I'm interested. Now that you've mentioned about the hockey lockout.
You know, it's like in the 90s, you had the baseball strike that wiped out the World Series for the first time since like 1904. Ironically, there was no World Series that year because the Giants, the New York Giants, refused to play the American League team. Which I don't remember who that was. Might have been Boston.
We'll have to look that up.
Because they said, yeah, they said, I'm not going to play that. This is the second World Series, and they're like, we're not playing them. They suck. Something like that. It's like, yeah, obviously that would never happen now. But so there have been 2 times since baseball started having a World Series that they've missed the World Series. So, and one was because of a player strike. So, and I think fans tend to side with whichever side isn't the cause of there not being the sport. If the players are on strike, it's usually on the players to get the bargaining agreement done because they're the ones who are going to get vilified by the fans. In this case, it was the owners locking them out. So when it's a lockout, the owners tend to get vilified. In this case, the owners' representation, Gary Bettman, this is the second time he's been involved in one of these things. So yeah, he's not someone I think should travel to any hockey towns without security.
That bad?
Yeah.
Oh wow. I hope things turn around for him.
For Bettman?
You don't think so?
I hope he gets fired. Really, he needs to lose his job. He's bad at it.
How long has he been?
I don't
Quite
even
some
know.
time.
It's been a while, but yeah, he needs to lose his job. But you know, the owners support him, so whatever.
Well, we'll see how the hockey season goes. You're going to keep us filled in.
Yes, I will be paying attention.
Thank you.
Don't expect me to talk about individual players a lot.
No, that's fine.
Because a lot of them have names that are difficult to pronounce at best.
No one from South America?
Not that I'm aware of.
No. It's all
possible.
in the colder.
Usually, yeah. Usually from places where there is ice. You know? For some reason, kids that have ice play hockey.
We're editing that out.
Why? That is an awesome line. Yeah, kids who have ice have hockey. Now that the Kings have won in LA, though, the indoor hockey rinks are getting more popular.
That's what I'm saying. Jacksonville has an indoor hockey rink.
Yeah. Well,
and we're
rink, but we don't have any kind of following for hockey, so kids don't necessarily want to go out and play hockey. So kids weren't necessarily wanting, because you had the Lakers and you had the Dodgers, and there's no football team, but you know, still.
Yeah.
There's the Chargers down south, but you don't have until the Kings won the Stanley Cup. You didn't have a lot of kids playing youth hockey in LA. When Gretzky first came to LA, you had a lot of kids start playing youth hockey.
Gretzky is like the Tiger Woods of golf. Or, yeah, the Tiger Woods of hockey, rather. Wouldn't you say?
I would say for a while that Tiger Woods was the Gretzky of golf.
Really?
I think it goes more that way.
Yeah.
Gretzky is a Hall of Famer. He's the all-time leading scorer, all-time leader in assists, all-time leader in goals.
He just looks so young. I keep thinking that maybe he's around Tiger's age.
No.
Not even close.
No, he retired back in the 90s, I think.
That shows how much I know about hockey.
Yeah. Yeah, but Gretzky was great. Gretzky was, well, I mean, that was his nickname, was a great one. Gretzky just could do everything. He didn't look imposing on the ice, but he could really do just about everything that you want a center to do. And it's not like he was going to play defenseman or anything like that. I mean, there have been great players. Mario Lemieux was an incredible player. Just back problems, couldn't stay healthy.
Yeah. A lot of injuries in hockey like there are in
football.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, I mean, you got people skating full speed and hitting each other fairly regularly. I mean, it's like in football, tackling. That's great. And the equivalent of tackling in hockey would probably be checking, which is you have a stick in your hand and you hit someone as hard as you can while you skate at them to prevent them from getting to the puck.
Plus, on top of that, you've got this blade that you're skating on.
Which we try not to use as weapons.
Oh, wow. Wow. Speaking of football, what's going on with the NFL playoffs?
NFL playoffs. We have the 49ers.
Yes, 49ers.
They are playing in Atlanta tomorrow. Probably will already have been done by the... Or I'm sorry, are they playing Sunday?
At the 20th. Both, I believe...
Both are playing on the 20th.
Yeah. NFC, you got 49ers and Falcons. AFC, you've got Ravens and Patriots.
Okay, so there's a chance this will be out before then. So,
yes.
We have the San Francisco 49ers at the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons are a very good team. Very quietly went 13-3 this year. I say quietly because you just didn't hear a lot about them. And you have the 49ers who, not very quietly, won their division. They really had a lot of momentum. They changed quarterbacks during the season, not because Alex Smith was doing horribly. It's just the coach liked Colin Kaepernick. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. They liked him better. And I understand why, because last week he broke a record. He broke the NFL playoff record and the NFL record for most rushing yards in a game for a quarterback with 181, I think.
Pretty impressive.
And that's on top of his 200-plus yards passing, two rushing touchdowns, I think a couple of passing touchdowns. He had an amazing game against a Green Bay team that was favored. At least actually no, I think San Francisco was the favorite in that, but still, that's a very talented Green Bay team that they put away. Green Bay never really got things together to where you were thinking that they had the momentum to make it to a Super Bowl, but still, very talented team, impressive win.
Very talented.
I could very well see San Francisco beating Atlanta. Atlanta, as good as they've been, they've not really been that impressive.
You don't think so? I mean, they were undefeated for quite some time, like the Texans.
What I mean by unimpressive or not being impressive is the way that they won. You take this last game against Seattle. They had a 20-point lead and they won by 3 points, or two or 3 points. They just don't seem to be putting teams away. The Patriots have been very quiet because they just do it year in and year out. The Ravens are probably a good story because people like it when there's a Hall of Fame caliber player getting ready to retire, and this is the last season for Ray Lewis. So this is it for him. This is his last run. So it's very possible, especially with New England being without their starting tight end, that Baltimore could pull things off this weekend. And it would be very interesting to see the Ravens go back to the Super Bowl. what the Super Bowl I would like to see would be San Francisco and New England.
I don't know. Patriots have won too many Super Bowls, have gone to the playoffs too many times. I just think that another team should give it a try.
Well, that would have been Houston, really, but Baltimore's been there.
I'm rooting for the Falcons.
The Falcons.
You never know. They could have some kind of upset on the 20th, and.
Well, I don't think it would be much of an upset, honestly. The Falcons are at home. They should win that game.
Absolutely.
They are. But I just, first off, San Francisco and New England would be the Super Bowl I would like to see.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think that that's the Super Bowl I'm going to see. I think the Ravens are on an interesting roll.
I wouldn't mind.
I wouldn't, but I can't count out the Patriots. So I'm probably going to say the Patriots win that game, and I'm going to say San Francisco. I'm going to say that I'm going to see the Super Bowl that I want to see because I see San Francisco beating the Falcons because I'm not convinced that the Falcons have put that losing in the playoff thing behind them. I wasn't impressed with their win over Seattle. Had they been down 20-0 and came back and won that game, different story. I'd say the Falcons are probably going to win this game, but I don't see that. I don't see that from them. There are certain things with teams that you call intangibles that just you wonder what they're like. There's something special about that team, and what I'm seeing in San Francisco, I'm seeing that something special. Now, Kaepernick's he's a young quarterback. Could he fall apart? Absolutely. So, I mean, obviously there's no guarantee. I wouldn't put money on either of these games.
I'm not a Raven fan or a New England fan, but I wouldn't mind seeing the Falcons play Patriots at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, that would probably be... Honestly, I think that the Super Bowl that would get the biggest draw would be
them?
Would be the 49ers and Ravens.
You think so?
I think so, because I think those are the most interesting stories, and people love great stories for Super Bowls. Now, in this case, you have Ray Lewis's final game would be a Super Bowl, and with the 49ers, you have the young quarterback, this guy who is running all over the place. And it's just been really, really good. So, I mean, you have compelling stories there.
Well, I'm looking forward to the 20th. What is that, a Sunday or
Yes,
Monday?
Sunday.
Sunday? Okay.
Sunday. You're not going to be watching those games, though, because you're going to be directing something that I wrote.
It's on my phone.
Yeah.
What's going on with the Jags?
Let's see. 2-14, the number 2 overall draft pick. My guess is they draft a defensive lineman because I do not see a quarterback worth drafting at number 2.
What I don't understand is why didn't they kept Mularkey as head coach?
Because he's not a very good head coach.
He was great with the Falcons.
He was awful with Baltimore. He was awful with the Jaguars. When we got rid of when I say we, I mean when the Jaguars got rid of their general manager, their GM.
Gene Smith?
Yeah. When Gene Smith went, that everybody knew at that point Mularkey was gone. And I'm not impressed with Mularkey's not that good of a coach.
He did turn the Falcons from the 29th in the league to 10th in the league.
Yeah. And back then, teams had more patience. And what we've seen from Mularkey in recent history is his tenure with Buffalo. His tenure with Buffalo and his tenure with the Jaguars, which amounted to a whole lot of losses and not very many wins. So, his only year now with the Jaguars will be remembered as 2-14. I would be very surprised if he got a head coaching job anywhere else. I don't think he's cut out to be head coach. I think he's a better coordinator than a head coach. But there are a lot of guys like that. I don't think that Mike Martz is a very good head coach. I think he's a great coordinator under the right leadership. He can run an offense, but he needs somebody who reins him in a little bit. And when he was with the Rams, Dick Vermeil reined him in a little bit, and that's what made that team successful. It was Vermeil's overall leadership, and Mike Martz suddenly became this golden boy that everybody wanted, and so Dick Vermeil retired spur of the moment, which he should have never done, and that put Mike Martz into a head coaching position. He ended up going to a Super Bowl. And that's nothing to sneeze at, but that team was a great team. That Rams team was a great team. But in the end, Mike Martz lost games because he hated to run the ball, and you have to run the ball from time to time. You have to establish some kind of running game. And when you had someone as good as Marshall Faulk, you have to do that. You have to find ways to incorporate him in, not just in the passing game, but actually running the ball.
What do you think of the new head coach, Gus Bradley?
I don't know. I mean, there's nothing to really judge.
Well, with the Seahawks, he turned them from the 27th in the league to the 9th in the league. So,
as a coordinator, again, we don't know. You never know if a coordinator is going to be a good head coach until he gets the chance to be a head coach. So I'm glad he's getting a chance.
But he's got to, I believe,
we don't
more than just one season.
Yeah, he's got to have more than one season. But we're not going to know. It's going to be a while before we know if this guy is really head coach material. Obviously something happened in the interview, maybe personal history with the GM. They think he's the guy. Okay, me personally, being on the outside, not being there for the interviews, I probably would have gone with somebody like Lovie Smith, a guy that I know can coach in this league, a guy who went to the Super Bowl with Rex Grossman of all people, so I know he gets good things out of his players. He got fired. Well, he left Chicago, and Chicago. Say what you want about Chicago, that they underachieved, that they didn't do as well, they missed the playoffs. They were 10-6 and missed the playoffs. It's not like they were losing and losing and losing. I think he got the best you could get out of those teams.
Well, I guess Caldwell, the new GM for the Jags, we'll see how he turns our first season.
I don't expect much.
Not at all.
Not this early. I mean, we're in a rebuilding mode. We don't have tons of talent to work with. You put a new defensive lineman on that defensive line, things will improve. But players like that take time to develop. So I don't expect him to be, the leading pass rusher in the game all of a sudden just because he came into the NFL in first season. Whoever it is they pick, because I don't have any names of who they're going to pick yet. They're probably a couple of names. There's probably a lot of analysis that's yet to happen. I don't think they know who they're going to pick yet. I think that's going to be months down the line. My sense is it'll be a defensive lineman, because that's a need position, and there are some good defensive linemen coming out of college.
So not much hope for the Jags.
I would expect to see a little bit of improvement, but maybe 2 or 3 games. And actually, I think if they win 3 games next year and they go back and have another high draft pick, that's not the worst thing in the world. 2 years in a row of having a very high draft pick. If you use those draft picks right, you can come back and really start to build. You look at the Cowboys back in the 90s. They drafted a quarterback. They went 1-15. the next season, well, obviously they got another pick then. So the next season, what do? They come back, and whether they 8-8, 9-7, and then after that they're playoffs, and then they're Super Bowl, and Aikman was like the backbone. People forget that he went 1-15 his first year. People want instant results now because guys like Luck come out, and you know what? Luck was fortunate enough to end up on a team like Indianapolis that still had pieces in place to make him somewhat successful. You don't always get that. You don't always get that opportunity. Tom Brady was fortunate enough to go in the 6th round because people didn't realize how good he was coming out of college. But he also ended up on a very good team. The Patriots didn't come out of nowhere. They were a good team before he took over as quarterback.
Yeah, the Patriots had good chemistry. I don't want them winning the Super Bowl. No offense to New England. I'm sorry.
I would like to see Brady win one more before he goes, and this is probably his last real legitimate shot at winning another Super Bowl. He was a good story. I think he's still a good story. The guy that everybody overlooked. I mean, the Jaguars could have had, every other team in the league could have had him. He was drafted in the 6th round. So, we love stories like that. But then once these people have success, we tend to turn our back and forget about them. You look at Mike Piazza, Dodgers catcher, drafted in the 63rd round of their draft. He was drafted as a first baseman. He had to be converted to catcher. It was a great story. He came up into the major leagues. He was only drafted because Tommy Lasorda was his father, godfather or something. So that's the only reason he was drafted at all. And he turns out to be a Hall of Fame caliber catcher. He missed the Hall of Fame this year. He should get in. People hold his defense against him because he wasn't the greatest defensive catcher. He wasn't a bad backstop, though. I mean, he kept the ball in front of him. He just wasn't good at throwing out runners. I think that's the knock on Piazza. But he is, without a doubt, the greatest offensive catcher of all time. He has the bad luck of having been a strong, powerful guy in the steroid era. But in every steroid investigation, his name has never come up. But he ends up with this guilt by association thing. Same with Craig Biggio. For some reason, he just gets lumped in, even though he's a great player who there's no reason to think that he was on steroids.
Do you think you're more of a baseball fan than a hockey fan?
I'm more of a baseball fan than an anything fan because I grew up playing baseball. Did not grow up playing hockey. Not a lot of places. I'd been skating. First time I'd ever been skating was in Los Angeles, but it wasn't exactly the most. You grow up in South Central LA. You're going to play basketball. You're going to play baseball. The part of LA that I lived in was predominantly Mexican American. A lot of baseball fans, a lot of people. Fernando Valenzuela was huge when I lived in LA. So there was a Fernando Mania going on. They won the World Series in '81. So there was a lot of, all my friends were into baseball. I remember the first time I realized there was such a thing as bandwagon fans is when my best friend Hector decided he was an Orioles fan after the Orioles won the World Series. I'm like, what about the Dodgers? Like, well, the Orioles won. But the Dodgers. I've never understood that whole jumping team sort of thing and getting on the bandwagon. I don't mind rooting for stories, good stories, and appreciating good teams.
The Red Sox,
that was a great story. I did not, when they won the World Series and to get to the World Series, they were down 3-0, and everybody thought they were done. Boston fans thought they were done. And why not? They hadn't won a World Series in 86 years.
Right.
Now it's just the Cubs. 100 years, well, over 100 years now without a World Series.
Wow.
1908. Wow. Last season. Well, it makes me wonder, is there anyone in Chicago who's been a Cubs fan all their life that was actually alive the last time the Cubs won a World Series?
Oh. I'm sure we can find someone.
I don't know. I don't know. That's like 104, right? That's not.
Hey, they live longer. 114 is the oldest.
Yeah. I don't think you could be a Cubs fan and live that long. It's just, yeah, being a Cubs fan has got to be hard on the body at some point. It's the mind.
Were you ever a Braves fan at all?
No.
Never?
Well, remember, the Braves used to be in the same division as the Dodgers, which never made sense to me, but I guess because they moved from Milwaukee to Atlanta. Mm-hmm. But so for the longest time, the Braves and Dodgers were sort of rivals. I say sort of rivals. They were rivals as much as the Dodgers and Cincinnati Reds were, being in the same division. They were just division rivals. Mm-hmm. Wasn't like Giants Dodgers, which, you know, I'll root for when we were in the same division, I would root for Atlanta when they were playing San Francisco. Couldn't give a shit less what they were doing otherwise. But, you know, same as now is pretty much. For some reason, when I lived in Virginia, there were a lot of Braves fans, mm-hmm. which made no sense to me. I didn't even know where that comes from. I mean, it really is that the closest team? I guess it is. I mean, or was then, because now they have the Washington Nationals. I wonder if they root for them in. Yeah, because I know they root for the Redskins in Virginia.
That is, I think, the closest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now that they have the Washington Nationals, that would be the closest. But at the time, you're right. That or the Baltimore Orioles would have been the closest. But where I lived in Virginia Beach, you had the Tidewater Tides, which was like the minor league team for the Mets. So I could see people rooting for the Mets. And when I moved to Virginia, I had just moved from New York. And I kind of rooted for the Mets when I got there. Of course, not when they were playing the Dodgers. But it was the Mets fans. When I went to games to see the Dodgers and wearing my Dodger hat at Shea Stadium, it was the Mets fans that made me dislike the Mets. So.
Oh, gosh. But back to football, the Steeler fans aren't so bad.
Unless you're a Cleveland fan, I guess. You know, well, the Steelers missed the playoffs this year, so.
Yeah, but they've got some loyal fans.
They've got a very great fan base.
Mm-hmm.
There are certain teams that just have amazing fans. You know, you kind of feel for them. You kind of like understand and appreciate just how passionate they are about their team. Pittsburgh Steelers was one of those groups of fans. Don't care for the Philadelphia fans in general. They tend to be nasty. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, these are the people that booed Santa Claus one year. I mean, come on. Not that I really care about Santa Claus, but come on. I mean, you're just gonna boo him in a basketball game, really? Yeah. Other fans.
Cold-hearted bastards. I'm just kidding.
Well, Cleveland, very great loyal fan base. More for football. Mm-hmm. You see that passion for the football teams. Yankees fans, great passionate fans. Would not want to. They're hostile towards any other fan, though. I think Boston fans are the same way.
Yes.
Or you kind of appreciate.
I don't know.
You appreciate.
I think the Yankees fans are a little more hostile than the Red Sox fans.
I don't know. I think it's about even, honestly.
You think so?
Yeah. I think we like to hate on the Yankees fans a little more because they've had the most success.
If you haven't already noticed, I'm a Red Sox fan.
It makes no sense to me, but okay.
I don't like the Yankees.
It makes sense. You have to be a Yankees fan to like the Yankees. It's the same with the Lakers and the Celtics. You know, people don't like those teams unless they love those teams. You know, they're teams that people love to hate. You know, but they have great fan bases. You know, Lakers have great fan base. I think the Dodgers have a good fan base. They've broken attendance records over the years. Boston has a great fan base. The Yankees have a great fan base. Maybe I'm biased on the Mets, but you know what? They have a good fan base. You know, but I wouldn't put them in the same category as like Pittsburgh or Cleveland that just have great overall fans. That aren't necessarily going to threaten to kill you if you're wearing another team's jersey. You know.
Well, I mean, speaking of fan base, crossing over to basketball, Cleveland, when LeBron was with them,
Cleveland got shafted by LeBron, and he, you know, that's his hometown. I mean, that's, you know, he was drafted there, and you know, oof. But LeBron will have a good year this year. I think he has a very good chance of repeating as NBA champion. His team, Miami, it's a very good team. It's a very well put together team. Oklahoma City is another team that probably is going to have a good shot this year. The Clippers, I think, it'll be interesting to see what they do in the playoffs. I think they have a very good shot, depending on how well they handle the playoffs, barring injuries or anything such thing. I think there's a good chance that the Lakers will end up missing the playoffs with all the hype for all these players that they signed. They just haven't gelled. They could make a run now, but even if they do, it's going to be difficult for them to make the playoffs. You know, I just don't. There are too many talented teams out there, and you know, if they make the playoffs, that means that they got onto a good run, and there's a chance they could go deep. But that's a big if, because I haven't seen anything from that team that tells me that they're capable of putting together, you know, 10, 15, 20 game win streaks going into the end of the season that would put them in a position to succeed in the playoffs. You know, but if they make the playoffs, they're going to have to do that well.
Right. Who do you think will win?
I think Miami's going to go to the championship again this year. My guess is they'll play. You know what? I'm going to say they'll play the Clippers. As much as I like Oklahoma City's talent, I don't know. I like the Clippers. Yeah, and I'm not a Clippers fan. I grew up in LA. I didn't even know they existed. But most people didn't know they existed. I mean, they do have a loyal fan base, and it's because their ticket prices are cheaper, and it's easier to go to a Clippers game than it is to a Lakers game.
Right.
But that said, I never had the opportunity to go to any games. So all I could really do is kind of watch them on TV. You know, and I grew up in the Magic Johnson, you know, era of LA basketball. So
nice. Have you ever played golf?
I have played miniature golf.
No.
No. I've gone to the driving range.
Good.
So I played both aspects of golf. I have driven the ball badly, and I have putted the ball. Oh, I'm okay. Yeah.
Well,
I think golf would be more interesting if they had those windmills and different little obstacle courses. I think that would be awesome.
Oh, come on. It's just going to mess up the beautiful courses.
It's grass. It's a desert of grass.
Well, what got me into golf was when Tiger played TPC in 2001 and won. Mm-hmm. I think that Tiger brought golf to life, just reinvented it a little bit because more youth got involved.
What Tiger did for golf is make it a little bit less, it would make it seem a little bit less elitist. Mm-hmm. You know, honestly, I mean that's what it was before. I mean, it's just really, it was a very, you associate golf with business leaders having fun on a walking around and politicians.
Not this young.
Not anybody of color.
Right.
Let's face it. You think golf, you think white.
Right.
And fair or not, I mean, it's not like inner city kids are going to get it of any color are going to get a chance to get into a country club and play golf.
But since Tiger arrived, he has brought more Asians into golf, along with blacks into golf, and
well, I think he made golf seem a little bit more real,
right,
to a lot of people,
right.
More from an economic background. Fair, whether that's fair or not, kids actually saw something different, and it drew a lot of attention to the sport. And and it wasn't because he was black; it's because he was dominant. Dominance will do that because dominance will draw a lot of attention. Because before Tiger was that dominant, you had Jack Nicklaus, who was dominant for years, and I'm sure he brought a lot of attention to the sport. But I don't know that he brought the same amount of attention.
Well, speaking of Jack Nicklaus, he played Sawgrass and mentioned that Sawgrass was not his strongest course that he played on. Tiger, on the other hand, when he played, my favorite memory was him on the 17th hole at Sawgrass. And since then, I have just been like so interested in playing golf, going to the driving range, more involved. I'm not like pro or anything like that, but I do love to play. And I think it was from Tiger playing Sawgrass.
My problem is when I grew up, I always thought of golf as not even really being a sport. It was, you watch golf on TV, it's a bunch of people being very, very quiet. Be quiet, don't. You know what? You have like 30-year-old men who can't concentrate if people are making noise. And meanwhile, you watch the Olympics and you watch the gymnastic teams. And you have 16-year-old girls having to do these very intricate, very difficult and dangerous gymnastics moves while there's a crowd yelling and while there's music from like the other events going on, because there's that whole floor gymnastics thing that's always done to music.
Right.
So you have that blaring. So you have all this distraction. So you're telling me a 16-year-old girl is a better athlete who can clear their mind of all the distractions and do something extraordinarily physically difficult that takes physical concentration, mental toughness, physical toughness, all these things.
It's all mental as well.
But all these things, and be able to that to me is an athlete, somebody who can actually drown out all the other stuff that's going on. Somebody flashes a camera in golf and golfers lose it. Like, oh, how dare you? How dare you take a picture of my backswing?
I do want to give props to the noted architects, golf architects, that designed the 17th hole on Sawgrass, because that's my favorite hole. And that the 17th hole is what have helped me be more involved and participate in golf, is 17th hole at Sawgrass.
Okay. Okay. Now, last topic that I recall is women in the four
major sports.
Yeah. The big four, whether you agree or disagree, being the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, and Major League Baseball. When will we see women in these leagues? Will we ever see women in these leagues?
We've already seen women in these leagues. Like, there's a professional women's football league.
But that's not the National Basketball Association. There's the WNBA, which is loosely affiliated.
Women have come a long way when it came to football.
Right. But those are women's only sports.
You want them to merge.
I think that eventually we're going to see some women actually playing in what has been considered
I'd
men's
like to
professional
see that.
sports. You look at hockey. We had Manon Ryu years ago, was part of the Tampa Bay Lightning, did not make it onto the team past preseason, but still, that's a NHL level team that had a female hockey player, at least in preseason, who was a goalie. She was also a model, so she was hot on top of it. But we had that. It may be a while before we see something like that again. It's going to take somebody special like Jackie Robinson, somebody who really just transcends and plays at such a high level and is going to draw that attention. It would be a major boon for any sport, provided the woman had the talent to compete at a high level. Not just be average, not just be a bench player, but compete at an all-star level the way Jackie Robinson
And you think we're going to
did.
see that soon?
I don't know about soon. I think there's still a little ways to go. In baseball, back in the 20s, we had women who were ready to go. We had I think her name was Jackie Matthews, who was a pitcher who struck out Babe Ruth, and she faced Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, and Jimmy Fox. Struck out 2 out of 3, got all 3 out. 1, 2, 3 inning, perfect. Women are banned from baseball after that. Commissioner of baseball says no more women in baseball.
Just because the women showed up, these professional baseball players.
These all 3 of which are Hall of Famers. Famed
Professional
Murderers
Hall of
Row.
Famers.
Murderers Row. The 20, we're talking about like the 27 Yankees. We're talking the possibly greatest team ever assembled. And this 17-year-old girl gets all of them. 1, 2, 3. So I think that shows that women can compete.
Absolutely.
In Major League Baseball. I've worked with people. I used to play catcher. I've worked with pitchers. I've taught women how to pitch. My ex-wife had a mid-90s fastball at one point. Not a lot of control yet, but that was, it came to her naturally. Her curveball was amazing.
Besides having a great instructor.
I taught her how to throw a 2-seam fastball, 3-seam fastball, palm ball, curveball, which was her definite best pitch, and knuckleball. The knuckleball and the curveball were the ones that she threw for consistent strikes. Needed work on on control on the fastball, but her 2-seam and 4-seam fastball, between 92 and 95 miles an hour. That's professional level.
Oh,
that's,
absolutely.
That's huge. She learns control.
Women are just better pitchers.
I think women actually have the physical body makeup. I mean, the body design of a woman is well suited for pitching. It's just my opinion.
Right.
Having worked with a lot of pitchers, having taught a lot of people to pitch, I think that actually is. I don't know for sure, but that's just my opinion.
So
I think in basketball we may see women playing in the NBA. There was talk for a while that one of the WNBA stars was good enough to
join the men in the
football.
NBA.
I think will be the last out of any of the sports before we see honestly, I think it'll start with a kicker.
Oh.
I think it'll start with a kicker.
Oh my gosh, you're getting me excited.
I think if with the NFL it would start with a kicker, maybe then cornerback, maybe wide receiver or something like that. It would be a very interesting transition because there's a whole lot of macho in professional sports. But yeah, I think eventually we'll see women in these sports. That's just my opinion.
So you would say first NBA, basketball,
maybe baseball.
Baseball first, then professional basketball.
Maybe hockey.
I'd have to agree with you.
Okay.
Anything else you want to talk about on Health Plus Sports?
No.
Well, thank you for joining me, Christian. I greatly appreciate it. And you, the viewers, thank you for joining me on Health Plus Sports. Catch us next time, February 3rd. Have a good night. Bye.